Hello, I'm Simon Evison and this is Property Box News. If this is your first time with us, then please subscribe for our regular programme updates. Just tap the little red button down below there. So later I'll be looking at the so-called broken deposit system, but first, the government's controversial right to rent scheme, which forces landlords to undertake immigration checks on prospective tenants, is to be challenged in the High Court in December. The government faces a challenge to its hostile environment policy after the Joint Council for the Welfare of Immigrants won the right in June to launch a High Court case against the Home Office's scheme, which obliges landlords to check the immigration status of would-be tenants. Now, the JCWI has announced that it has gained consent for a full hearing to take place before the High Court on the 18th and the 19th of December. The organisation said this is going to be the first proper chance a court in the UK will have to determine the legality of the hostile environment Theresa May created that conscripted ordinary people into acting as her border guards. It added, "We are close to ending this pernicious experiment once and for all." The JCWI is seeking to crowdfund the challenge, having so far raised just over £5,000 of the £15,000 target. The RLA is supporting the challenge, and Policy Director David Smith had this to say: "Landlords will welcome the High Court decision to allow a judicial review of the right to rent policy, which has put them in the impossible position of acting as untrained border police, trying to ascertain who does and who does not have the right to be in the country." He went on to say, "This has created difficulties for many legitimate tenants as landlords are forced to play safe and only rent to those with a UK passport." He finished off by saying, "The announcement is an important step towards overturning a policy which the government's own inspectorate had described as having yet to demonstrate its worth." Now, we will of course update you as this story develops. I'm sure it's going to run for a while yet. And in the meantime, why not drop a comment below and tell us your thoughts on the right to rent scheme. In a recent report by Which, after an extensive survey, the consumer group have described the current tenants deposit system as broken, and it's in need of a major overhaul after evidence shows some tenants faced waiting weeks to get their money returned or having to challenge charges that they feel are unreasonable. According to the study from the consumer group, it found that 43% of renters that faced moving costs used a credit card, loan or overdraft, or borrowed money from family and friends to cover the cost of moving into a property. Among tenants who had moved out in the last 2 years, 16% said it took more than 4 weeks to get their deposit back, with 31% having to pay a new security deposit when they didn't have their previous one back. The report also highlights issues with deposit deductions. Over half of tenants, some 55%, who didn't get their money back in full challenged the decision. The top reason for a deduction concerned issues over cleaning, which affected 15%, while damage to the property affected 32%. However, 81% of tenants who faced a deduction for cleaning and 75% of those who faced a deduction for property damage thought this was unreasonable. There were a number of recommendations. The consumer group wants to see landlords forced to register with local authorities with information logged on a publicly available database and linked to the existing register of rogue landlords and the agents established in April 2018. It's also calling for the creation of an independent regulator for lettings and management agents with a mandatory legally binding code of practice and strong penalties for rogue operators. Also, they suggest that the cash-based system be replaced with an insurance system for renters. Now, this has been met with objection, and the Chief Executive Officer of My Deposits, Eddie Hooker, felt that an insurance system would offer no further protection to the tenant and will in fact cost the tenant more in the long term. He said the fees and premiums charged over a 10-year renting period could end up costing the tenant £6,000 to £7,000 for nothing. What many don't understand is that deposits are refundable if the tenant abides by the terms of the tenancy agreement. Insurance premiums are not. So what are your thoughts on this? Should the current system be changed to an insurance-based system? And is the deposit resolution service unfit for purpose, or is it fit for purpose? Leave us a comment below. We'd really like to know your thoughts. And finally, before I go, if you are a landlord in certain areas of Sheffield, the deadline for applying for a licence is not far off. The local council are imposing selective licensing. Under the new regulations, by the 1st of November, all landlords who own property in parts of London Road, Abbeydale Road and Chesterfield Road must have applied for a licence in order to carry on renting out their properties to tenants. The new scheme is being introduced to improve the standards of properties in the local private rented sector. This according to the City Council. Landlords are required to submit a valid application before November 1st, 2018, with the £750 fee payable in 2 phases. So if landlords who own property in those areas do not receive an application form in the post, they should contact the council on the telephone number in the description below. That's all from me. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Goodbye. Which the government's own inspector of on the right to rent system. I'll do that again.